create a co-op.
If you want, I can create a co-op. Hey
Like,
everybody, welcome back to AQINA Writers Bookclub Podcast, Episode 3. We are, for now, a good little team collab of Ryan's here and Small's Noodle. Channels in the description, maybe. Alas, last episode we talked about Fallout. This episode, we're going to talk about House of the Dragon. Small's Noodle, we just watched House of the Dragon, and now, obviously, haha, this is definitely spoilers! Spoilers in the title, for sure.
We have not watched the finale, so please do not spoil it for us.
Yeah, we haven't watched the season finale because this is August 5th when we're recording this episode. But at the time of this episode recording. But spoilers from us to you from everything thus far. So be warned, don't watch this episode if you don't want spoilers. Or skip to the very end when I burp. I don't know. So I've been watching House of the Dragon. Obviously, we're now 2 seasons into the show, and we're waiting for the season finale of season 2. It's crazy, man. It's looking crazy. This last episode was actually it felt very Game of Thronesy. We're finally I feel like we're getting a little on track, as kind of a prologue prequel series tends to be. There's this sort of its own tone that it has with its own characters of its own time. And then there's this but how do we get to sort of the present moment of Game of Thrones? And this last episode we watched last episode where basically at the relative beginning, one of these knights decides that he wants to go try and tame a dragon. He thinks he might be a dragon seed. So he goes into the pit, he tries to tame a dragon, get the dragon's attention, totally goes wrong, dragon eats him alive. Burns him alive, all sorts of stuff. Then what happens is, near the end of the episode, after everyone kind of, dramatically talking as they do, then you have Hugh Hammer, and you have this other guy who kind of looks like a Stark, but he's not. He's some other dude that is I'm secretly a Targaryen. And what happens is him and Hugh Hammer end up getting the dragons in the end. And it's funny, though, because the guy who's I'm secretly a Targaryen guy ends up getting this other dragon that isn't Vermithor by, a kind of accident, because he falls even further in the dragon pit, and then this dragon kind of likes him. So he has some sort of riz of some kind. What can you tell me about the last episode we saw here?
So oh my gosh, there's so much to say. So thing is so the last episode is basically where we get to see Vermithor.
Vermithor.
And Vermithor is a very old dragon. The last rider he had was Terrace, the king, the peaceful king. And as I will mention, just to get it out of the way, Silverwing was Viserys and Daemon, and apparently Ulf. I think his name is Ulf. How you say his name? Ulf. And Ulf's
it's like
mom.
Ulf or something.
Ulf or something. But it was Alyssa Targaryen rode Silverwing. So Vermithor and Silverwing used to be Nesmith. And I think Ulf is I think he's a half sibling through Valeron, I think, is what his parentage was. Because he calls Jace his nephew several times. So I that's what I would assume, or something like that. But so you have Vermithor, and then you have Silverwing, and they get claimed this episode. But they get claimed very unconventionally, because as we've seen in the past, season 1 mainly, you have to sing to it a little bit. You have to put your hand to its snout if it accepts you. There's a whole process, with the Dragon Keeper. And in this episode, last episode, she sent out the call to all the Targaryen bastards. It's just Rhaenyra doing it. Like, she has no help of the Dragon Keepers. And I feel like had the Dragon Keepers been there, Vermithor would not, like, have killed so many. But she gets a bunch of these
Yeah.
people in. She warns them. She's like, hopefully one of you gets a dragon. But you may not come out of this alive. Essentially, that's her entire thing. So she blockades, and it's just funny. This probably wasn't as funny to you, but it was so hilarious to me. Where she calls Vermithor out, and she's like, "Come on, calm down. I know I just woke you up from your fucking nap, but we need you to be claimed because we need you to be in a war." And he's so irritated. Like, he's such a grumpy dragon. He's like, "Why are these many people here? Why are you disturbing me?"
Yep.
And then she calls him up. She wakes this grumpy dragon up, and then she looks at the people she has summoned, and she's like, "Good luck," and she jets out. And it was so funny to me because I'm like, wouldn't she want to stay there to ensure that this process goes smooth? And she just dipped, and she just dips. She leaves them, and
Yep.
she leaves a bunch of people who don't know how to, like, because she didn't even teach them Valyrian. She's like, "Oh, this word means to calm. This word means to obey." Like, she just leaves them, and she
Mm-hmm.
throws about like 30 people at this dragon and leaves them, and then she goes on the, and it all goes to shit right after she leaves because
Yep.
one of
But
the dudes
and of course,
tries to.
it's ultimately just a big culling process towards the miracle of Hugh Hammer and Ulf getting the dragon, though.
It is, and it's kind of funny because I made this reference. I don't know if you heard, but I made this reference of when, in Game of Thrones, so she has all of the Targaryen bastards that she knows that answered the call, because there could
Mm-hmm.
be more, but all the ones that answered the call are there. And in Game of Thrones, I think it's about season 2, maybe end of season 1, maybe season 2. It could also be season 3. But there's a thing where Cersei and Joffrey start killing all of Robert Baratheon's bastards. And the only one that we know that lives is the one that is what's his name? Gary, the Gary
Oh, I mean,
or something.
What season is this of Game of Thrones?
I think it's season 1 because
That's crazy.
because they don't want any. I think it's like season 1, season 2, but it's where Gendry, that's his name. I was like, it starts with a G. But there's a point where because people are starting to look into the fact that Joffrey has blonde hair, Robert Baratheon had black hair. So Cersei starts killing these bastards so that there's no one else contend to the throne that is of Robert's own blood. Because even though they are illegitimate, they still have his blood, so they would have more claim. So they start killing these bastards off, and Gendry's the only one that survives.
Right.
And I think this is probably about season 2, season 3. And it reminded me of that when Rhaenyra she effectively, and I don't think she meant to, but she effectively got rid of the Targaryen bastard problem. At least for the ones who are an adult. We don't know about Aegon's kids, or Aegon's kids. But she
Aegon.
effectively does what she did. Aegon.
Egging me on, more like.
But she effectively does that, just like a less malicious way. And so I was like, oh, that's a weird parallel I saw, that I got reminded of. But so this guy tries to bond with this dude, immediately sets off Game of Thrones like, I do not want you, and starts blasting people. It becomes a bloodbath, and if you didn't know before that this guy was important to the story, you definitely know when the camera is focused on him in this absolute chaos. He is focused on 100%. So if you weren't sure if he was going to be a person or not, definitely with how the camera is sticking to him, he is important. And I saw someone say this, but he claims the dragon. And I saw someone in the comments very disturbed and kind of like restless, and Hugh Hammer gave him that same energy where he was like, I'm not afraid of you. So like burn me, but I'm not. And the dragon responded to that energy. Versus when we go to Ulf, and he literally has fallen down, because we see him fall down, and for like 5 minutes we don't know what happened. We think he's dead, but we end up seeing the fact that he stumbles further into the dragon pit, and he steps on this clutch of eggs, and Silverring pops out. And she's like, oh, a human. And she immediately, she sees him, and the difference between Hugh and Olaf is that Hugh kind of made the dragon submit in a way. Not like made him, because like he's a dragon. You can't make him do anything. But like, it's almost like Hugh kind of overtook the dragon, matched his energy, whereas Olaf submitted to the dragon, and therefore Silverwing was much more approachable. Like, she was much more docile. She almost acted like, you know, a new kitten who found this new plaything. You know, she's like, oh wow,
Yeah.
you're a new thing. And honestly, he's anybody who would have a dragon. That man immediately flew and went to King's Landing. And like, a lot of people are like, yeah, that's anybody who got him. And so it's very interesting to see that like Viemathor is claimed in a moment of chaos. Silverwing is claimed in a moment of chaos, but her chaos is so dulled because clearly I know she's a dragon. She can hear her like husband over here eating people. Like, I'm sure they have very good sense of hearing. So it still claims, like, Wolf still claims her in a very chaotic moment, but it's a lot more, it's almost as if the way he claimed her would be like if there was dragon keepers there. Like, it's the ideal situation. Whereas, like, Viemathor was like, what happens when you just shove a bunch of people at someone. And so it's a very interesting parallel to it. And then you see Aemon reacting to it. And the funny thing I thought about this was that they just say dragon and he's already out. I think he thought it was Rhaenyra. I don't think he thought it was this man who just claimed a dragon and has been a dragon lord for a second. I think he thought it was Rhaenyra, and when it wasn't Rhaenyra, he was like, oh, well, I need to figure out where this person's going so I can get them on my side. I think he was trying to recruit the person. And then he saw it landed on Dragonstone, he saw Viemathor, he saw Cyrax, he saw everyone, and he, like, dipped. But, like, it's interesting how he's been so cocky so far that I didn't expect him to flee, actually. I thought he would have continued because he's been so cocky. You know, he went after Melee. He went after Sunfire with Vhagar. Now, relatively, they're a little bit smaller dragons than Vhagar is, but you saw how cocky he was with them. And so I was surprised he didn't, like, you know, didn't even Dragonfire. He just fleed. And so that was interesting to me, where it's like, okay, his cockiness has kind of hit a wall. Like, he's kind of now having to be like, oh, I don't have the biggest dragon anymore. And he actually starts to think about things instead of before where he was like, well, I have the biggest dragon, so they're not going to attack us. And now it's like, oh,
I'm the biggest bird.
Yeah, like, he had that mentality, and then now he's kind of like, oh shit, they have a dragon. Because Vhagar is older than Demical. He is in his prime, you would say. He's about 100-something years old. Vhagar is like close to reaching, like she's a very old dragon. So I think in that aspect too, is he has to really plan his attacks now. Not that he hasn't been, but a little bit more strategic. Instead of relying on the fact that he has like the biggest dragon in the world, which is interesting. And then I thought it was funny that Reyna literally saw like sheep carcasses and was like, I'm gonna leave the princes for a moment that I was charged to take care of. I'm gonna go look for this dragon. I was like, ma'am, what are you doing? You left those kids. Oh my god. But I have a theory that may get proven wrong in the finale. We have not watched it at the time of recording. I think she's gonna claim in the book she doesn't. In the book she gets a dragon actually, and it's one of the dragons that hatches. I think because she had a dragon. And she's the last dragon rider in Daenerys. So she already has a dragon in the book. Now, I know a bunch of purists are gonna be like, oh my god! George R. R. Martin has stated, this is directly from him, he has stated that the books are unconfirmed rumors.
Right. It's a sort of a fable tale in the book, and now this is sort of, the perspective of everyone in the show.
And he has said that the books are literally what happened play a game of telephone spanning centuries. So it's hard to know so because it's been a game of telephone, we don't know everything that's in the book happened. So I hear a lot of people being like, oh, I wish I see Rhaenyra, book Daemon, whatever. And I'm like, if the creator himself has come out and said, alright, so the book is rumors, the book is tall tales that we don't know are true, and the show is real, that means there is no true canonical book Rhaenyra. And so, because like one of the big things against the show is that, oh, this is books. And I'm like, dude, the creator came out and said that the show is canon and the books are. Let's use our heads. Let's use our cognitive thinking. And so I think it's because so I think she's gonna claim Sheep Stealer, and Sheep Stealer is named Sheep Stealer because he eats sheep and he steals them. It's very common.
That's like naming me Burger King Whopper Jr. You know?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It's like something you eat. And so there is another dragon. Now, I don't know if anyone will claim him. They may change it. George R. R. Martin may have him be claimed, but there's another dragon called Cannibal. And he's called Cannibal because anytime a Targaryen has tried to claim him, he has eaten them. Or anytime he has been around smaller dragons, he has eaten them. So he is called Cannibal. He is a wild dragon. There are about wild dragons. One is Sheep Stealer, one is Cannibal, there is a third one. But he keeps to himself. I believe he's a dark dragon. I can't exactly remember his name particularly. But he is a larger dragon, and so there's about 3 wild dragons, and one gets claimed. I'm curious to see if Cannibal gets claimed. And I say this because Daenerys claimed essentially 3 dragons in her run on the TV on Game of Thrones.
Yeah, she had a lot of dragons by the end of it.
Yeah, like she claimed them essentially, like because they all listened, or else they would have been like riderless and like not listened very well. So she essentially claimed all 3 of them. I think it's super cool the fact that she claimed 3 dragons. And so it would be really interesting if someone in the family claimed 2 to show that there is a precedent for someone claiming. Because also something we have to remember is that with the doom of old Valyria, a lot of I'd say science of dragon claiming has been lost.
Right.
And Targaryens, I found, that bonding that they do in the show. But before that, they had to claim dragons. So they used to go up and claim like wild dragons. And I think that's really interesting. And so it would be curious to see if one of the characters claims 2 dragons so that we can say, hey, Daenerys, this is why Daenerys is able to claim 3, because someone in her line was also able to claim 1 dragon. And so that's really cool. It was such an interesting episode because another thing that's been controversially talked about, funny enough, is Jace and Rhaenyra's conversation. As we know, when Rhaenyra and Laenor married, they did try to have kids. Unfortunately, they could not. Because back in that time, being gay was seen as a sin. And it's still seen as a sin in Game of Thrones time, so not much has really changed. But
right.
He couldn't get it up.
It's a shame. I always thought Game of Thrones was more progressive.
But so she, had sex with Harwin Strong. And I say this because it's important when we talk about Jason Rhaenyra's conversation that we are reminded the fact that, like, he is not Laenor's son, but he was accepted by Laenor, he was accepted by Corlys, by everyone in the family except Alicent Hightower and her kids, mainly. I don't think Helena cared. I think Helena loved her nephews, but everyone else talked about it. That was on Alicent's side. And so you get this conversation where Jace has a concern. And his concern starts with the fact that my claim to the Iron Throne is because I have a dragon. What if one of these dragon seeds also thinks they have a claim to the throne? And Rhaenyra starts off now I do say I see both sides of the argument, but she starts it off being very dismissive of his concerns, where she's like, well, you're my son, you're my heir, the crown's of course gonna go to you. And he's like, yeah, but, like, here's the issue. Like, they are also, like, even though they're illegitimate, they still have Targaryen blood. What if they try to choose the crown for themselves? What if they try to rise up? And Rhaenyra's not really hearing it because she doesn't think, like, she has a mindset of like, well, they use bastards against me my entire life. Let me do that. And then it seems like the argument's done. It seems like, all right, well, Jace is not being heard. Rhaenyra is not really listening. She's going to continue her plan. So Jace he's going to leave. He stops. He turns back around. And he asks her point blank about Harwin Strong. Now, this is the second time he has asked her. If you remember, he asked her in season 1. Is he my father?
I do not remember the season 1.
So he had, when Harwin Strong was leaving the Harrenhal, before Harwin Strong died, he looked at his mom holding Joffrey, and he asked her, is he my father? She does not answer him. She says, you are Targaryen, and that is what matters. So this is, if you I have a great memory in terms of this, but, like, if you remember, a lot of people are saying this is, like, his first time asking her, but I'm like, no, he asked her, this is the second time. It's just a lot more direct, and it's using his name. So this is the first time he mentioned Harwin Strong's dad, but it is not the first time he asked her. And so he asked her, he's like, did you think I'd have dark hair? Now, something that also angers me about this conversation is the fact that they have shown Targaryens as only having silver hair. Mm-hmm. Which is an issue, because there are dark-haired Targaryens. Robert Baratheon is one, for example. His grandmother was Targaryen.
Oh.
But he is black-haired. He has Targaryen blood in him. And then Rhaenys Targaryen, who tragically died, RIP to Queen. She, in the book, and I know I said that the books are not true canon, but in George R. R. Martin's, like, familial lineage, of, like, he has in that they were bastards as much, because they saw Rhaenys having dark hair and were like, oh, I guess the gene just didn't stick. And then also, Rhaenyra's mom, Aemma, had dark-haired genes that she could have passed on because her dad or her mom was an Arryn of the Vale, and they are dark-haired people. They're like brunettes. So she could have given it through biology to kids. So it's this whole thing, but there are dark-haired Targaryens. And so he talked about, like, did you think I would have dark hair when you into bed? Now, something I don't like Chase for saying is like, I don't think he understood the agreement that his mom and Laenor made. He doesn't know about that. He doesn't know about the agreement that, like, they could have dalliances outside the marriage.
Right, yeah.
So I understand, like, his anger, but he also doesn't know that, so it seems almost like he's calling his mom a whore without saying she's a whore.
Right, about Laenor being really gay or whatever.
Yeah, like, he doesn't know. So I do give him slack for some of the things he says, because he doesn't know the agreement that his parents had. And then Rhaenyra comes in, and she's like, no, you're my heir, you know, whatever. Like, she's kind of speechless, and he leaves. Now, apparently, according to the timeline of the Jace dies. He dies a little. That's the last conversation they have, because apparently, in the death, he goes and he dies. He dies by crossbow. But according to canon we have, or the very flimsy canon we have of the book, that is the last conversation they sort of have. Like, that's in depth before he dies. And I hope that's not true. I hope we get a little bit more, because I would like this solved. Because, I do think it's something that has plagued him his entire life, where, like, his mother accepted him, his grandmother accepted him, you know, his Dorless accepted him, right? Like, Laenor, everyone else accepted him, but and she was spreading these rumors, and she was talking to her kids, saying that these guys are bastards. And so he has been filled with this insecurity this entire time.
Holy smokes! I'm in a place where there's a bunch of trees. Yeah, the Anna looking girl, right? Because Rhaenyra's Elsa, and then the other woman is like Anna, basically. Yeah. The greens.
Yeah, it's like,
the greens.
And it's interesting. It's so funny because I'm like the black, and then I'm like, I mean the team. I'm like, it's very weird how you the way you have to refer to, like, I mean the dragon, Game of Thrones. This is what I'm talking about, because for some reason their team thing is black.
Yep. And when the dragons eat them,
like,
when the dragons eat the bad Targaryens, is it called eating your greens? That's weird that you said that Robert Baratheon was part Targaryen, because then that means that basically him fighting the Rhaegar Targaryen guy from Lyanna Stark is basically, again, a weird Targaryen civil war, kinda, sorta.
Yeah, it very much is too, and I really want to see that. I really want to see how that because I'm trying to figure out what canon. Let me do that. I want to see how that happens because, as we know, just historical wise, it very much reminds me of Alan, or not Alan, Anne Boleyn in Henry VIII, and I'll explain it like this because because him being Targaryen, he should have had not saying that you need to be loyal to your family, but he should have had some sort of like, yeah, her name is Allison. It starts with Allison. So much so, because it's funny, she is the last person to die. In terms of everyone who dies, she's the last. She never wears green for the rest of her life. She goes mad and she dies of winter.
Yep.
And it's very interesting because a lot of people are like, "Oh wow, I can't believe she lived that long." And I'm like, if you think about it, it's karma, because she started this dance of dragons with her dad. I think it's only fitting that she saw everyone else die before she like perished. But she starts to dance, and then that happens, and it's interesting because then what happens after, the very next thing that breaks the family is the Dream. No, is it Dream? No, it's the Blackfire Rebellion. And that has to do with a Targaryen bastard who gets legitimized by his father. And so that's the next crack in the foundation. So by the time Robert Baratheon is delusional about Lyanna Stark, and his ear to by the time he comes in being like, "You stole her from me," it has been effectively kind of crackled in that instance. But I want to see Robert's Rebellion because when we meet, before House of Dragon, Game of Thrones is our main thing to speculate. But to me, it's very interesting because House of the Dragon, the men are, at least in the Targaryen family, they seem a lot smarter. I mean, some of them are idiots, but like, it's a little bit more strategic on how they would do marriage and stuff. And Daemon literally says that it used to be a practice to have 2 wives. Like Aegon, Conqueror, had 2 wives. And so, like, I almost think that what if Rhaegar, like, he didn't intentionally do the what if he was trying to do, like, a 2 marriage situation? And they just didn't like it because it didn't fit. It wasn't, quote unquote, the conservative 1-wife picket fence thing. Like, they're like, "Oh, he's trying to divorce her, or he's trying to divorce Ella Martell and then fuck her over." He could have been doing like an ancient practice, which would be the 2 wives.
Well, what if?
And also,
what if he was doing that? Well, thanks guys for tuning in to AQINA Writers. Jesus. Yeah?
Yeah, are you okay? Did you drink water?
You gonna say your stuff? Still something you want to say?
Oh no, I can wait for the 4th episode.
Chicken wing.
This is chicken wing.
No. Chicken wing. Alright. Well, that was episode 3. I learned a new power. I found a random book. And apparently you can eat books in this game, and they give you a 5% chance of cutting down more wood when you chop down trees. Stardew Valley is a lot of fun, actually.
Oh my god.